Go ahead, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. This meeting will now come to order for the September 30th meeting of the Governor's Commission on Hispanic and Latin American Community Affairs. I'd like to remind all of our commissions and guests here to remain muted unless recognized. Please use the hand raise function to do so. Only recognized members may speak and make motions this meeting is being held in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. I'd like to begin with just a couple of welcoming remarks here to the Maryland Chamber of Commerce. We know that Marylanders and Hispanic Marylanders, but Marylanders from all ethnicities are business owners. Are represented in the small business community. I'm a small business owner myself, and I used to work at the Maryland Department of Commerce. I really do understand what it means to try to bring a business to Maryland and to try to sell our state. And our state has a lot of excellent selling points, but at times our state can also be challenging to businesses. And so this is my absolute pleasure and honor to host the Maryland Chamber of Commerce because I'd like all of us as part of a community of vibrant business owners and or adjacent friends of business owners to learn where Maryland stands and to be mindful of this community because for a lot of us small business owners, this is how we feed our families, and so it's an incredible honor, and so I'm going to turn it over then to our guest speakers. Mary Kane and Abby Ludwig, please. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to Mary to introduce yourself, and then Abby, and then take it from there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ernesto, for inviting us to join you this evening. Yes, it is very important. We have about 7,000 members here in the state of Maryland. And the range of businesses, it can be a solo entrepreneur right up to Lockheed Martin. So we try to cover all different size businesses and the issues that they have. And so then we also have Abby. You want to introduce yourself? I'm the president and CEO of the Maryland Chamber.
Sure. Pleasure to be here. Abby Ludwig, Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the Chamber. I work on a lot of our economic competitiveness data, so that is part of what I'll present to you all today. And we're joined also by Grayson Wiggins, who is our Senior VP of Government Affairs. Grayson?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so as Abby said, I'm the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Chamber, which is an overly fancy way of saying lobbyist. So I help run the government affairs side of the chamber.
And does a great job doing it. So
Grayson, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip you there, buddy. You were lost in my screen of windows.
That's okay.
See you, and thank you for being here.
Mary, I'll take a second and I'll share my screen and we can kick it off.
okay, that'll be great.
All right, just confirming everyone can see. Good.
It is on the presenter mode, like the presenter view, as opposed to the PowerPoint. Just FYI.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it is.
See if I can change that.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, there we go. Perfect. All right, Mary, do you want to kick us off with the mission?
Sure. The mission of the Maryland Chamber of Commerce is to advance inclusive partnerships for a Maryland where all businesses and their communities thrive. Business is a really important part of the health and welfare of a state and the communities within the state. And actually, the business of business is people. And so it's having our employees, it's making sure our customers are taken care of, or our clients. And here in Maryland, we use data to do that. It was a number of years ago, you know, when the governor came in, he's very competitive. and he likes to see the numbers. And so we, with a number of our other colleagues across the country, put together this red book where it actually takes very bipartisan data. It's US Census Bureau. It's not weighted in a Democratic or progressive or conservative or Republican way. It is strictly the facts, and that's what we use to show where Maryland stands competitively amongst the rest of the states. So this is where we start. And Abby, I'm going to hand it over to you because Abby has actually gotten a PhD in Maryland competitiveness since this came about. She's become a guru on all the data that we need to make the case.
Well, thanks, Mary. Yeah, honorary degree, right? So I do tell everyone when I do this presentation, my background is, of course, not in economics. It is in communications. But when I started at the Chamber, Mary had found the Red Book and felt like it was a treasure trove of data, to which I agreed. But as I went through the data, I realized I came on board right around the same time that Governor Moore took office, and our General Assembly had a really historic turnover. So I very much, like our General Assembly, did not necessarily understand what everything was telling us or where we stood. So I had an advantage there. I dug into the data and really saw stories there about Maryland's business environment, about our competitiveness, about where we had challenges and opportunities. So I'll talk to you more about this through the presentation. Grayson will share a little bit before I dig into it, but this slide just shows you a highlight of what we'll talk about. And the other thing that I often say is it may sound like doom and gloom, but as Mary said, if we don't start with the understanding of where we are, we're never really going to be able to align and be able to get it better. So the intent of this is also for us, we really want to present a couple of years from now, if not next year, saying these rankings are changing for the positive, for the better. And that's a big part of where our business community comes in as advocates to make sure that we all understand this, but can work together to change it. So you'll hear more about this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we will dig into it more. I want to hand it over to Grayson just for a second, and then we'll get going.
Thanks, Abby. So I think, as a state last year, we went into the legislative session looking at a budget deficit. We are looking at another budget deficit, what we call a structural deficit in the out years as we move forward. And what we really, preach at the Maryland Chamber of Commerce is that the primary solution to addressing budget deficits and budget shortages at the state level is to grow our economy. And unfortunately, Maryland in the past decade or so has lagged behind other states, as the data on the previous slide indicated, from an economic growth perspective. And I think Governor Moore certainly recognizes that. He has attended several of our meetings, and we've attended several of his, where he's consistently talking about the need to grow Maryland's economy because it creates more economic opportunities for Marylanders and ultimately more economic mobility for Marylanders. And so how do we get there? I think, one of the critical areas that we have identified along with Governor Moore is permitting reform and housing supply. So if we're going to grow the economy, we're going to need a place or more places for people to live closer to where they work and more transit options across the state. And so Governor Moore recently, earlier this month, signed an executive order that is designed to create more housing in Maryland, which will not only help grow the economy, but also bring housing prices down across the state. We applaud him for those efforts. And we think that the executive order that he issued earlier this month will have a significant impact on the state's economy over time. Now, the governor has also identified several lighthouse industries, as he calls them. Those are tech, AI, quantum, and life sciences. He believes Maryland can be a leader in this industry or those industries, and I know his administration is working on attracting more businesses specifically in those industries, and specifically around the quantum industry down in the College Park region, where they've really tried to allocate resources to bring businesses into Maryland and help create jobs. Again, you've got some additional information on here. Momentum for reform, right? So we have to get the economy in Maryland kickstarted. We have to expand our economic growth to address those budget shortages. And really, a lot of times when I talk to businesses, it's not broad sweeping policy. It's the little things that matter. And for example, we deal with businesses all the time who are having difficulties bringing new properties online in local jurisdictions because of the permitting delays. And so when they can't build, they can't hire. And when they can't hire, we don't get new workers and an expanded economy. And it's a cyclical issue because when they can't build the new housing, we don't have space for new workers. And so it really is it amplifies the impact with those small issues. And so we're working to address those, not only at the local level, but again, with Governor Moore at the state level. Next slide. And so this kind of outlines what I just talked about. As I usually do, I got a little ahead of myself, but the information here really talks about the permitting reforms that streamlining the process is making it easier to build and expand the economy. The housing executive order that I previously mentioned, which we think will create more housing, driving down the price and also helping the economy expand. And then alignment with competitive goals. As Mary noted, the governor is exceptionally competitive and exceptionally aware of where Maryland ranks from a competitive perspective. And so I do think his administration is taking steps to try and make Maryland more competitive and grow the economy. And I think this is where I send it back over to Abby.
Thank you. All right, so we will talk through some business and job growth trends, actually business formation trends, tax data, economic data. I'll go a little quickly through some of this. I want to make sure that we have some time to have a discussion, answer any questions that you have. I won't be able to see the chat as I present, but do feel free to put questions in the chat. And if anyone feels Ernesto, Mary, Grayson, like I should stop, just let me know. No big deal at all. So get going. So business formation, applications, and per capita ranks. This is new data that the Chamber is looking at, and it starts us off on a good note, on a positive note. Maryland actually ranks extremely well for per capita business formation applications. We're 9th in the country. That's great. But it's an important story to put into context with where do we land with those business applications turning into actual successful businesses and job creators. So I won't spend a whole lot of time kind of walking you through all of the data on this particular slide. We're doing well per capita, and we're seeing a slight decline year over year here. But here's where I really want to spend the time. It's in the openings and closing numbers and what that looks like for Maryland year over year, but also with some of our neighboring states. Often when you hear business openings and applications reported, you hear kind of big numbers, but it's not told in the context of how many businesses closed in that period of time, or where we see some job creation issues. So Maryland actually, this isn't shown on this particular slide, Maryland right now, when we have businesses who apply to open a business, does not have a very big business to job ratio rate. Other states do. But another area we're concerned about is our openings and closings are coming in kind of close to one another, particularly for 2024, right? So if you look at 2024 for Maryland, we had just over 19,000 openings, but just over 17,000 closings. So the net increase really isn't the 19,000 number that you often hear, right? It's actually the 2,200 number. The survival rate then is 12%. For Virginia, it's 10%, Pennsylvania, 5%. Delaware is kind of an outlier here with 18%, and so is West Virginia. We look at our neighboring states because Maryland is positioned pretty close to our states. So our neighbor states, it's about an hour from wherever you are to a state line. We were in Hagerstown yesterday and a facility that was 1 mile away from Pennsylvania. So we have to be competitive with those states, and we need to look at them when they're doing something that is really outstanding. Delaware clearly has some interesting corporate laws that come into play, but they're also seeing a pretty tremendous population growth and business growth overall. West Virginia tends to be a bit less costly and a bit more friendly to business as far as regulation. So some highlights here are small business openings, as I said, outpaced the closings by only about 2,200. This was down 43% from 2023. That's a concerning number for us. That year-over-year change, while kind of in the 2000 area, is a big one. Virginia and Delaware do continue to outperform us in survival in most years, net growth and jobs per new business in some of the other data that we looked at. Why does it matter, right? We try to put this data always in the context of why does it matter to Maryland businesses, Maryland as a whole, as a residents? Well, clearly, right, our small businesses are a big part of our economy. They employ quite a lot of our residents overall in the state. But it also, our businesses and our jobs create tax revenue for the state that fund priorities and fund areas that need money, right, to survive: transportation, education. You can keep going down the list. When we looked at a quick analysis of this, right now, because of the survival rates and the job ratio rates, right now we're leaving about 20 to 25,000 jobs on the table each year versus Virginia and Delaware. If you use that rough estimate of 5,000 per job in state tax revenue, that's about 100 to 125 million in annual loss. So what we're seeing is we've got a state where we've got a really entrepreneur friendly community, right? People want to own and start businesses and be successful, but we're not necessarily making it easy for them to succeed or easy enough for them to succeed. And if we could do some things to change that, we could pretty easily bring in more revenue and have a solution that isn't a new tax or a new fee or a new regulation. I think an important thing to mention is that as the chamber, we often have to fight back against regulations and policies and taxes, but we often really do always try to present a solution. And this is one. Be more friendly to businesses who are already here. Make it easier for them to survive and create new jobs, and that will benefit all of us. Business friendliness. So every year we take a look at CNBC's top states for business rankings. This is not an opinion survey. It is one of the most trusted surveys, though, in the country. CEOs and businesses who are looking to start, relocate, find a new home are looking at this survey. There is another one out from the CEO magazine and business facilities, but this is a pretty standard one, and it goes through a number of different metrics. What I'll mention here is for a number of years, CNBC, their methodology weighted workforce the most out of everything, right? So that plays a factor because last year in 2024, CNBC for the first time shifted that weighting to be transportation, and this year it's economy. So I mentioned that because the overall ranking metric here is not apples to apples. I think that's just important for us to be transparent about, but it still is telling us a story. They are not looking at just one metric alone, right? So overall, right, Maryland is ranking 32nd. That's down one from last year. Our concern here is that it's down 10 spots from 2023. North Carolina and Virginia continuously rank number 1 or number 2. They are, no matter if the weighting and scoring changes from year to year, they are constantly doing really well here. Some important things to mention to you all, though: business friendliness kind of remains static from last year to this year, 37th. That is not a number we love. North Dakota has the highest ranking here. Infrastructure, workforce, and economy all did tick up in the rankings, which is great news. We're excited about that. Cost of doing business did too, but 46th is not a good number, whether it went up or down. That being one of the most expensive states, the 4th most expensive state to do business in, is not something that's going to get us more business growth, right? It's very, very concerning. And that number has not shifted tremendously over the last couple of years. Another big one that I think we should talk a bit about: quality of life and then cost of living. Those are declining and kind of significantly from year to year. Cost of living and quality of life, of course, impact another thing that we'll talk about, and that's population growth or decline. If it's too expensive to live here, it's going to be hard for employers to find people to fill jobs, right? So that's a big concern for us. Something that we also look at are who are the top 10 states for doing business. We try our hardest to make comparisons between states that are very much like Maryland, but then also who's just doing well here. Something we consistently see every single year that we look at this survey is that states in the Southeast are doing really well with business friendliness. It's not terribly surprising. A lot of them have adopted a lot of pro-growth policies. They're friendlier in taxes. They're seeing migrations to their state, so they have the workforce. And we consistently see the headlines day after day that investments from businesses are being made in several of these states. Economic performance and economic outlook. So there's a lot here, but I'll talk you through it. In the left corner here, you see economic outlook, and that rank is 42nd. This goes through a number. This is from rich states, poor states, by the way. The survey has been done, or study has been done for a number of years, at least 10, probably more. They're looking at things like personal income tax rate, corporate income tax, tax burden for property tax, sales tax, estate inheritance tax. The list kind of goes on, and it is on this slide. Right now, we're ranking 42nd. Economic performance rank is 41st. So that's looking at GDP growth, domestic migration, and then non-farm employment growth. And those numbers go back at least 10 years. The chart at the top then gives you a look at where we have ranked for a number of years. And even I went back a little bit further earlier today, responding to a data request that we received. The story has been very consistent for Maryland with economic outlook and performance. Unfortunately, this has been in the high 30s, low 40s for a number of years, even dating back to 2021 and before that. These are concerning things, of course. These are signals. For a number of years, we've seen signals in Maryland that our economy is in a little bit of danger. There's stagnation happening. Our outlook isn't great. Our performance isn't great. Business taxes. So this is the one that you probably won't love. Overall business tax climate, corporate tax, individual income tax, sales tax, property tax, and unemployment. So this data comes from the Tax Foundation. And again, we've looked at this for a number of years now, and you can look back even further with the Tax Foundation. And again, the data is very similar for past years. So in 2025, our overall business tax rate is 46. Again, we don't have much further to go to be considered as the state with the worst business tax climate. That's very, very concerning to us. Our corporate tax rate is ranked 37th, individual income 45th, sales tax 39th, and property tax and unemployment tax. We're seeing some better numbers there for our rankings, which is really good. A thing that I'll mention is we took a look at, Wallet Hub put out a study recently on tax burden, effective tax burden in the state. We have the 9th highest effective tax burden overall. It's at 10.04%. When we look at our neighboring states, clearly Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, all outperforming us in almost every one of these, if not every one of the metrics, particularly in overall business tax climate. This shows you just a map version of the same data I just talked you through. Sometimes it's helpful to see in this way. Maryland 46, Virginia 28th, Pennsylvania 34th, and Delaware 18th. You can see here too, who are the top states and who are the bottom states. We are not yet in those bottom states, but we are getting dangerously close, right? And I need to mention that these rankings were all done before the end of this past session, right? So things like the tech tax, some of the individual tax changes, bracket changes that happened, none of those are yet reflected in any of the rankings. So our concern seriously is that these could go down. And then lastly, corporate tax rates. So Maryland has the 9th highest corporate tax rate. This has stayed pretty steady over a number of years at 8.25%. Virginia has a better rate at 6%. Pennsylvania has an interesting story. They're 7.99%, they're 13th, so they are lower than Maryland, but a couple of years ago they were higher. They intentionally passed legislation that year after year lowers the corporate tax rate. And Mary and Grayson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it goes down to 4.99%. Yep, okay. So they are signaling to businesses and corporations that while their tax rate right now is 7.99%, they have legislation on the books to change that and lower it. Businesses are paying attention to that. One of the things that we hear regularly from our members and just from the business community in general, as I wrap up so that we can just have a conversation and answer any questions you have and hear some of your stories, is that the uncertainty in Maryland, the consistent passing of new regulations, taxes, or even consideration of them is really concerning. Businesses need consistency. They need to be sure of what they're walking into, what the environment is that they're opening a business in. And right now, Pennsylvania is giving them a signal that Maryland is not. I'll wrap up there and I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can discuss. I know that was extremely fast. There's a lot of data here. We do go into a lot of depth on our website. So I'll put some links in the chat so that I can send you to some of the blogs that we've put out. We will be emailing them as we continue to come out with new information over the course of the next couple of months. And I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm sure Mary and Grayson are too.
Thank you so much, Abby, for that wonderful presentation. Grayson and Mary, thank you. Happy to take some questions here from the commissioners. If there are any, please use your raise hand function and we'll take it from there. All right, Commissioner Ramos, please.
Thank you so much for that very thorough and important presentation. I appreciated all the data that was shared. I had a question about the Maryland's competitiveness and opportunities for Maryland. One of the points was around leveraging our geographic position and proximity to federal jobs as well as research institutions. And I was wondering what the thoughts were around how the landscape has changed over the past year with reductions in the federal workforce and so much research being cut with I'm a researcher, with no clear path for growth in that area.
I'll take a stab at a bit of an answer here, and then Mary and Grayson, I'd encourage you to kind of weigh in. I think one of the things that we saw and continue to push on is, unfortunately, right, Maryland has a big investment in federal research, federal workforce, way more than you see in any other state, really. And what that signals to us is always really diversify your economy, because you just never know really what's going to happen, right? I think about just in the Marcom field, right? The field of things like SEO and advertising just has changed dramatically. And so any business who invested in that also has changed dramatically. So we really we're encouraged to see lighthouse industries like AI tech, but we're also working on a manufacturing initiative because if we can really leverage manufacturing and increase jobs there, that will be helpful to the state. So I think that's one of the takeaways for us. It's concerning, right? We want to see research in these universities and federal positions continue, but other than that, I can't weigh in all that much more.
Yes, it is very concerning what's happening, but as Abby said, it really tells us we need to diversify. We can't just depend on the federal government. And we should take advantage of being right outside of Washington, D.C., which is the most important city in the world. We have all of those embassies there that we need to work with. And one thing, I was at a meeting in D.C., And the difference between what's happening in Virginia versus Maryland at this time is that we're losing federal jobs. They're losing businesses.
Mm.
Because the Virginia businesses are hired for the Defense Department and do all different kinds of things. We have the workers that go right into the federal government. So it's a very interesting conundrum on each side. And yes, it's going to be very difficult in the next couple of years.
And I would just add from a research perspective, so we work with the Business for Federal Research Funding Coalition, which is a coalition of state and local chambers across the country pushing for federal funding for research for lighthouse institutions like University of Maryland, Hopkins, et cetera. And so that's a issue that we're working on. I would also note I think the line in that slide really gets at another point, which is something we've heard recently from our defense contracting industry, which has been very healthy in Maryland. And that is that with the cuts in the federal government, that the tax that was recently enacted last year by the General Assembly, what's being called the tech tax, and hits that industry, has been doubly compounding the issue for those businesses and making it very difficult for many of them to expand or retain staff. So it's not just about maintaining our position as a state that has access to DC, but it's also about not undertaking policies that have negative impacts on the industries that support the federal government.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that, just that when our businesses have federal contracts, they're usually over a period of years. And they usually are not super high margin for profit. So if you impose a 3% tech tax on a contract that you've set in stone for the next 5 years, and you're looking at maybe a 4 to 6% return, that's a big chunk of change out of your contract that is very difficult to pass on.
Indeed. Commissioner Toro, welcome.
Hi, good. Hey, welcome. Hi. Just wanted, first, thank you for all the information. Wanted to verify, because this is state level, but is consideration being given to local level? What's going on in the towns, the counties? Because state level, yes, we need to develop jobs, we need to diversify our jobs, but at the local level, there are policies that sometimes might be in common. They just don't have the infrastructure in place to develop, for an example, the tech sector, but they do have infrastructure to develop agriculture or tourism. So is this being considered? Is there local data for each county?
Oh, great question and points. And you cut out for a bit of it, but I think I got the gist, and certainly I can answer on the county level side. It depends on the data, quite honestly. So at the population level, yes. And I neglected to go through some of the population data. That's showing us that Maryland's out domestic migration is ranked 45th in the country. So we're among one of the worst, and that has been a trend year after year. There are I do have county data, I just have not refreshed it for this year. But last year, I'm just going off of memory, Frederick County, for instance, their population was growing. So we took a look at some of that information. Baltimore City's was not. Baltimore City's population was declining. Most of the other counties were pretty static from year to year. It really truly depends on the data set that we're looking at. So like tax competitiveness data tends to not be something that you can get down into the local or county level. I will say, and it just happens to be the case that we will be meeting with this group tomorrow. We have something called the Maryland Chamber Federation. And those folks are from our local regional chambers of commerce, some economic development groups, Maryland Tourism Coalition, the Tech Council, and a couple of other statewide associations. And they are kind of our boots on the ground and on the county and local level in a lot of cases, telling us what is happening and what trends they're seeing, what they're concerned about, and then relaying that to our teams. And Grayson and Mary hear from those folks often, or businesses often, that are running into some of the local challenges. So I think they might be able to weigh in on that. We are also about to launch a project. It will be, I'm going to say probably mid-year next year, that we just literally signed the contract on today, that we hope will help us get to the county level data. It will be visualization data of metrics like population and taxes. And because of that, we do think that there's a chance we'll be able to dig a little bit more deeply into what's happening throughout our different municipalities.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Commissioner Toro and Abby, for the information. Any other questions for the Maryland Chamber? Excellent. Go ahead, Commissioner Ramos, and then Commissioner Toro again.
Sorry, just one quick question. What do you think explains the negative migration that you presented earlier on the slides? Is it people going to remote work and can go back wherever? I don't know when that started to happen.
Great question that we have dug into. I'm searching my memory a little bit here since we went through a bunch of data. We know going back to 2020 that over 100,000 residents have migrated out of the state. The population numbers, when you look at it at a net, look like our state population is increasing, and it is. That is from immigration. But people who were Maryland residents, for some reason or another, are choosing to move out of our state. And we're actually working with the University of Maryland School of Public Policy this semester to dig more into that, to try to get a better understanding of why that is happening. But here's what we know right now. We know that the 18 to 24 segment and the 65 and above segment tend to be where we're seeing the most domestic outmigration. For the younger segment, we think it's job related. A lot more jobs are being created in other states versus Maryland right now. And for the kind of retiring population, our retirement taxes are not friendly in Maryland. So that is pushing people to other states like Delaware in particular. And really the southeast or southeast kind of belt, right, has seen a really big influx of population growth that started in 2020. Overall, it's leveled out a little bit over the last year, but not tremendously. So we're taking a little bit of a deeper dive into why it's happening and where they are going. Last year, when we took a look at this, Baltimore Banner had put out information basically saying Virginia, North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Delaware were among where a lot of our residents were going.
Thank you, Commissioner Toro.
Just out of curiosity, because following what you've just mentioned, and I know housing is a priority in the state, but is it being considered, for an example, that the migration out of the state could be due to the fact housing, like in my case, I'm pretty much I'm in Carroll County, and people tend to go to Hanover, for an example, because housing costs are lower, taxes tend to be lower, rents are lower due to housing. So is there a partnership with the Department of Housing, state level, a possible partnership being developed or considered with local governments? Because sometimes policies do affect housing inventory, housing costs due to regulations that increase the pricing of housing. Is that being considered? Any initiatives being in the pipeline?
I'll first say thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that housing and affordability overall is 100% a piece of the puzzle of why people are moving out of the state. There's just no doubt about it. We're starting to have conversations, right? We'll have this at one of our events in January, where the Secretary of Housing is invited to participate in a conversation in conjunction with some of our other secretaries, because housing absolutely is having an impact on things like jobs and business growth, and our economy overall. Mary and Grayson are much more versed in kind of the policy and initiative world of this. But we have certainly, I think Mary mentioned it a bit, we have heard, or actually Grayson, it just made it for you, building houses in the permit process, the timelines is really, really difficult in Maryland. We've heard from a builder a couple of years ago who said Maryland isn't even on the table for building houses, which is terrible news in our opinion.
Yeah, I would just add, it's a supply and demand issue in Maryland. So our state is 96,000 housing units short of where we want to be and where we need to be from an affordable housing perspective. That's been an ongoing issue for at least the last 4 or 5 years. As I mentioned, the governor signed his executive order earlier this month to try and promote the creation of new housing, specifically looking at potential state land that could be developed. The issue that we have is, and it may have been you mentioned this earlier, is the somewhat competing interest between the state and the local government. And so to give you an example of that, as the governor is, I think, doing the right thing and trying to create more housing to drive down the price of housing. We have Montgomery County, for example, which has enacted rent control. The effect of that has been that the county, before enacting that policy, was seeing several thousand units built per year. Since the enactment of that policy, that number has dropped to around 70, is my understanding. Not 70,000, 70 units a year in a county with a population of more than 1 million. So there is that competing philosophy there that is creating some issues in our housing market.
All right, we have time for one last question and one really quick answer, because we have a few other things to do today here. Commissioner Estrada, welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all this wonderful information. My questions were around the technology impact. I know that after COVID, a lot of the state level businesses applications went to online. Is there any data that shows that maybe that was a reflection of why businesses were turned or were affected because now technology became a challenge for them? And the second question is there any data that shows if the other states are investing in education at a younger age, like our high school level or middle school level, promoting small businesses growth? Is there any such data that you can share?
All great questions. So far, I have not been able to find any data that's giving us really hard and fast information on what is driving the business kind of application, creation, survival rate, right? So it's strictly numbers that are reported, at least at the federal and state levels. Basically, though, we're with 7,800 members hearing from businesses quite often about what the problems are that they're running into. So technology very well could have a role in it. We just don't know enough, and I don't want to comment and say that we do and we don't. On the education front, I'm not familiar enough with policies across the country, and we haven't dug deep into what other states are doing on that end. But that's another study that we are working with the School of Public Policy on this semester to dig a little bit further into. How are other states solving workforce and talent pipeline challenges, so that we can hopefully use what they find and what's working across the country to influence doing some more of that in our state.
And I would just quickly add on the small business workforce component, and I do want to give the governor credit for this because this was in his bill last year. He got a policy passed that will make it easier for businesses, specifically small businesses, to participate in the apprenticeship model. Maryland previously has had a very strict journey person to apprentice ratio. And I think the General Assembly recognized, and the governor certainly recognized, that that is not necessary for your non-traditional apprenticeships specifically. So those outside the construction trades where safety is not as much of an issue. And so we are hopeful that that policy will allow more small businesses to bring on more apprenticeships, thus expanding not only their workforce, but the workforce opportunities for the apprentices.
That is really exciting. I actually
It is.
I didn't know that.
And
It's,
we're one of the first states in the country to really press this, and
Yeah.
my hope is that the state will continue to move forward in that direction.
Exactly. Thank you, Grayson. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Abby, so much for joining us here today. A virtual round of applause, please, for our speakers this evening. I'll be sharing contact information as well as the links here on our chat window to some of the economic data that they did publish on our website. You guys, we also welcome you, of course, to our Hispanic Heritage Month event at the Walters Art Museum. If you haven't received an invitation yet, you will from GOSI. We welcome you at the Walters Art Museum on October the 9th at 5:30 p.m. or 5 p.m., something like that, for a wonderful evening of art and food and networking and gathering with the community. And so thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. Take care.
You.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we have shared their contact information with the other commissions, our brothers and sisters over at the Middle East, South Asia, and Asia Pacific, Caribbean, as well as African commissions are really excited at just the research and just the absolute powerhouse that is our Maryland Chamber of Commerce in just communicating some of the facts around our economic competitiveness. And so please, for any of the businesses that you come across in your day-to-day as commissioners, as leaders in our community, let them know of the resource. Let them know of the local chambers of commerce. Of course, we have the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. They're part of the greater Chamber of Commerce Federation that they were talking about, that they meet with on a regular basis to also garner insights. And so, without further ado, we'll move on then to the next part of our agenda real quick. We have to approve the minutes from the July 8th and August 11th meetings. Do we have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
A motion.
Thank you. A motion by Commissioner Katie Simbala. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Estrada. Any discussion on behalf of the minutes that were distributed a few weeks ago? Thank you, Cheryl, for taking care of those. Hearing none, may we please have a vote on those minutes? I'm gonna raise our hands here high. Make sure that Cheryl can see them. Thank you, everybody.
I need Commissioner Hernandez and Commissioner Landaverdes.
Cheryl, I'm abstaining since I wasn't at either one of those meetings, so I don't have a point of reference.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. It's Stephanie, okay,
Thank you.
great. So we have, we had 7 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 abstain.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda is our kind of working groups, but I feel like both roundtables have been on pause. And so I think that we're probably going to table that until we're done with Hispanic Heritage Month. I'll be able to sleep tonight. Thank you so much, everybody who stayed on yesterday to finish the agenda. Oof, like now I think that was like the last, like final thing that we need to take care of for Hispanic Heritage Month. It should be an evening to remember. And so I can't stress how excited I am. Commissioner Rivera, how's it going? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you just raised your hand. All right. And so that, and then the other thing was, the last thing was the Faith in Blue MOU. And I was just going to turn it over to our chief. I don't know if there's some sort of update as to where the MOU stands with GoSee, just kind of given the optics of it all. Any updates there?
I don't know if I could speak so much on the stance of GOSI, but I can say that just out of the abundance of caution and just to see what the courts are saying and what's being presented, there's just a lack of information out there right now. I know there's some hearings scheduled in October, but just to find out what's going on with the organization would probably be prudent.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. We will await the outcomes of the hearing. And thank you. You had mentioned that. I just forgot the date of the hearing. And so yeah, the moral of the story is, like, for absolutely no reason should you have the word police on your car. In any sense of it. It just does not go well with our law enforcers, regardless of how benign and how well intentioned that may have been. That's kind of like the sad reality of it all. Anything else from our commissioners for the good of the cause before we wrap up today? Thank you so much for being here for this wonderful presentation by the Chamber of Commerce. Commissioner Toto, did you want to say something?
Oh, yes. Just and I think it was included in the agenda. Wanted to consult about the possibility of GoSee volunteering to providing a meal at the Night by Night shelter, which is administered by the Human Services Programs of Carroll County, for between 40 and 50 individuals, maybe some staff. I don't have the exact amount. Wanted to consult if there's a possibility of doing that. The Human Services Programs of Carroll County HSP confirmed the dates available are October, let me verify here, are October 3rd and October 13. October 3rd is a Friday and October 13 is a Monday. How many people is allowed inside the shelter? I would have to consult if this is something we want to pursue, because they do have a limited space. So I just wanted to verify if there's interest in doing such a thing. I think it will be a great initiative to, for the Hispanic community, to provide support to those who need it the most. Maybe engage in conversation of how we can further improve our communities. Just wanted to check if it's possible.
So, so we have a motion for a community event, supporting this organization on the 3rd and the 13th. And so I guess, I mean, and I think that's a wonderful idea. Are you envisioning it, Commissioner Toto, as kind of like a day of service, and then just the folks that are available to sign up with you to volunteer? Is that reasonable?
Yes, the intent. Yeah, the intent.
That?
One that's willing to, because I am aware it's Carroll County It's far for some for some commissioners.
Yeah.
And since it's a shelter, they do have limited space, so I would have to confirm how many can attend if there's interest in volunteering.
Sure.
I would definitely volunteer to provide food items. But if there's interest, I will definitely need to know what day, if there's interest, what day, so that way I can get back to HSP, confirm how much staff how many volunteers can be there, and if there's any way for us to work around if the limited space.
All right. So what I suggest, is in the interest of time, because we're losing a quorum here, is that for folks that are interested in volunteering for this, to please reach out to Commissioner Toto directly. And then Commissioner Toto, maybe you can email everybody, reply to the email list, and send everybody the dates and the information of where it's going to be. And then people can take the opportunity to sign up with you directly at that time.
Perfect. I'll definitely do that. Yes.
Excellent. Oh, yeah, thank you so much for showing that, for sharing that with us. That's absolutely wonderful that you're taking on this initiative.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Hernandez, he's going to be sharing that over email to everybody. Yes. Chief.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Toro, you must have been like eavesdropping our private meetings at GOCI, because we were talking about how we can, as an office, help with food insecurity and do some type of volunteering. So maybe offline, not so much as a commission, but with GOCI, if you can follow up with Sylvia and myself. Cheryl, because we are working on that. We're trying to find where we can go as a team and go and volunteer. I don't know if we can get everybody this quickly, but let's talk offline of other opportunities that we can do and work with you.
Thank you, Chief. That's really wonderful. And please keep us in the loop. We'd love to join you guys. If you guys are going to be doing something with the whole group, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Toto. And I just want to say, guys, I'm incredibly proud of how quickly we were able to put Hispanic Heritage Month together. Thank you so much for stepping up. Those who donated to help sponsor the food, thank you for doing that. Now we can pay our caterer. And so it should be a wonderful event. And I think this is the last time. Is this the last time we meet before? Or do we have a meeting on Monday, perhaps? And so, but so for those that I don't see on Monday, we'll see you at Hispanic Heritage Month. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
You don't have a quorum, so there's no need to have a motion.
We will adjourn the meeting then. Okay.
Okay, I'm just saving everybody time.
Unilaterally. Thank you very much, you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. Wonderful to
Good
see
night,
you.
everybody.
Take care.